Um, so yeah, how the story is transmitted about our, philosophies, our, obviously Jamaicans very Christian, and then moved into Rastafarianism, and that was really a powerful medium for me, a young Black British, to get my head around and understand why are they doing that? What does it mean? They wanted to separate the idea. I think it's Sizzler that sings a song about "Don't give me no white God." I was like, what? What is he saying there? Is there something else that I'm missing? So the idea of peeling off into the beautiful word that you used, I like that word, the transmission of what's coming to us. And as you said, we're living it too. So it was through music and a small amount of film. And a few people's telling a story. As I said, we weren't that deep into religion. But one thing I will say to you, one thing that's important is money. So I know every African and Caribbean country has this thing, and I don't know what it's called. In Jamaica, we call it partner. So partner is like a saving system where every week you drop money to somebody in the community. And then let's say I give, £10 every week to somebody in my family. And that means we can use that to, buy a bed, buy a car, put a deposit down for a house, start a business, all sorts of things. When I was doing my work in financial literacy, I understood that all African countries do it. South Asian countries do it as well. So that was another part of the kind of story that we didn't know and was not taught by being in this country. And that's because that's an important building block of where we go forward as Africans about, understanding that. And the thing about that concept where you would literally go to someone's house and say, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Brown, here's the partner for this week." What happens there? You're talking to Mrs. Brown. You're seeing Mrs. Brown's children, Mrs. Brown's family, other people that come. So there's a communication. So as time went by and we got involved with banks, that communication goes missing because banks don't want to tell you how to invest your money or how to build your community. So that was another transmission, if you like, that we had that was part of our heritage. Do you have this in Nigeria?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
You see, now this is why I love this thing that I'm doing here. Because now we are sort of unveiling the integrity of our culture. These are the ropes that are tying the people together, and we must understand that they are important. I think it was in 2009, I wrote one of my books. It had to do with African children. In this case, about me, it is sort of an autobiography where I talked about how children grew up in Africa, how I grew up in Africa, as it were. No? So I talked at a point about our culture, a certain way that you behave as children, which of course is not really peculiar only to African children. It's everything, everywhere. Because later the book will be reviewed by some anthropologists here, and they will
Mm.
openly say, this is what you are describing is exactly how we live here too. Unfortunately, most of these things, we are losing it here. So basically, I'm talking about the human culture here. But one thing I'm trying to point out there is that the human culture is so sophisticated, the
Yeah.
way it is designed. Um, the sophistication is also very subtle in that you almost don't feel it because it is a way
Mm.
that you get
Mm.
into it, you live it every day. You don't understand that you are living a sophisticated life. For example, nobody tell you that this is what you are going to do. You just know that this is what you are going to do as children now, learning how to play the game. In that kind of game that I was using as an example there in the case of Nigeria where I grew up, I talked of children going to hunt lizard. We take the catapult, go to hunt lizard, we kill the lizard, we go to hunt small birds and things like that. And I said in the book at a point, all these things, nobody taught us. And all these things at the point, we stopped doing them. Nobody told us to stop. And those who were younger than us keep on doing it. So then you ask your question, how do you get it interwoven in this web of cultural thing, in these activities? So it becomes important when you begin to decode this cultural thing one by one. So as a people, it is important that we learn how it functions because our children are going to need them. Unfortunately, of course, our children, my son, for example, now is 4 years. He doesn't have those kind of experience, but of course, he's living in a different kind of world. He wasn't born in Africa, so he doesn't understand that. He lived the kind of life that is lived here in Europe. But of course, through me, I'm going to tell him how I live so that he can see if that kind of life that I live make any sense to him. Of course, it's left for him to make sense out of it, no? He can say, okay, daddy, that is stupid, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
And
you
this is
can't
your
explain it.
choice. But I'm going to have to do my part by telling him, son, this has been my journey. This is where I'm coming from. This is what I did at your old age. But it is your choice. Do what you like. No? All right. You were saying something important before, no? That there was this Jamaica linguistics. And language is one of the most important part of our culture also that we need to understand. So this woman was telling you to speak a Jamaican language. Can you explain a little bit what was her justification for speaking patois?
Before I answer that question, I got to just touch on what you just said because you're saying something too interesting. Right. So, fish, yeah, fish don't know that they're in water. They don't know. The water has a vibration that affects the fish. That means fish behave in a certain way and do certain things. Um, I don't think fish come out and say, what is this? What's going on? This is water. Oh, we're living in water. In the same way that the culture that we're in, in terms of our DNA. I was listening to a podcast last week, and there was this. It was Oprah Winfrey and this other gentleman, Johan Hari, his name is, and he was saying about a project where, children in America are not playing outside anymore. So they created a project. It wasn't him, but somebody created a project where they would go out and play and be safe. And interestingly enough, what did they do? They went and built camps. They went and explored. They went and tried to do hunting and all of that. So it is something very deep rooted in, I think, everybody's DNA. How, I don't know how you teach children to do it in this kind of sanitized, so-called sanitized place where you're not allowed to go out and you have to stay in front of a screen. But it's interesting how do we know? I remember when you were talking, I remember my brother and myself, we had a pram, a pushchair, and he said, let's make a go-kart. So we made a go-kart, and we got our hands dirty, we got cuts and scrapes, and I tore up my coat, and I never had so much fun. So it's very important, I think, that we don't lose that idea, the story, one, but the ability to let children explore on their own, and use their own imagination, because that idea of imagination has been extracted from us and then you can have your imagination by playing a PlayStation or by watching television. So yeah, what you said is interesting. So this is not a woman that I met. It was a woman that I used to see on television and hear on the radio. And what her justification was is the rhythm and the flow of the language. It resonated with us. It's something that the language is a derived from, I think it might be Twi, a Ghanaian language. So it's got the language has soul. There's words in there that we say, Guan or Dea, Medea, which when I look back now and I think it's just language, but it's got it's got resonance, and the language. I think what she was trying to say, it connects a timeline. If you dismantle your language, you're starting to dismantle your culture, um, and not having um, that as your primary go-to way of communicating. I think what she was trying to say is going to lead to disaster, because you can tell a story in your dialect that you can't tell it like that in English, or you can't tell that story like that in Italian. So I think, again, Louise was a storyteller, and she was, as I said, a poet. And I think that was the important part of a cultural theme that she wanted to ensure that was alive, and awake, and able to connect with ourselves too, but our ancestors and our friends and our family. And so there's a lineage, and that's what I think she was trying to teach us.
That is very important. And we have to pass that down to the generation that are coming also after us, because that is the only way we connect. If we do a deep research, we'll come to understand that is how the people that were taken away from Africa managed to even have a semblance of identity, managed to build it and able to rebel despite the calculated
Yeah,
work that was done by the enslaver to detach
yeah,
them, to make sure they don't connect, to make sure they don't speak the same language. There was a calculated work done there, but yet, because human beings are so sophisticated, somehow they manage to know a lot of things and manage to codify most of their communication. Because if you cannot communicate, you cannot operate. And if you cannot operate,
mm,
what are you? Just a
yeah,
small tool for other person to manipulate.